Hi, I'm Jimmy Colefax, and this is The Story. Our guest today is Keith Glasgow, who's sharing his life journey. As we heard before the break, Keith had been drifting further and further away from the Lord. Next, we'll hear how the Lord gets a hold of his heart and he starts going in the other direction.
It wasn't long after that I left the pub and went back up to Auckland where they were living. Mm. And my younger sisters went to the youth group in the church there, and the youth group had an Sunday evening coffee bar outreach called Drift In. And so they said, come along. So I went along, and it was cool. It was really good music and really lay back. And so I kept going, and it wasn't long, probably a number of weeks only, that God really worked in my life, and I ended up giving my life back to the Lord completely.
Through that outreach?
Through that outreach, yes. Yeah.
So there was something about the way they did it, or, well, obviously the Holy Spirit was working in your heart.
Yeah, but that was the catalyst. It was the means whereby I was able to actually do what I knew I had to do sometime anyway, and that is give my life back to the Lord, yeah.
So you were lukewarm for a period.
Yeah. Lukewarm.
Lukewarm, which we know the Lord does not like.
Yeah.
And then you went from that extreme to being on fire.
Absolutely.
What happened?
Well,
and why did you get so on fire?
Well, once I'd given my life to the Lord, I don't know, the Spirit of God, I think, must have been the Spirit of God, because I suddenly had a passion for mission and for outreach and for sharing the gospel. And that translated into a whole life of ministry that followed that later, of course. But at that time, it started there. But immediately there were some challenges. And I look back now and see the evil one's finger and hand in all that, because...
he doesn't like people being full on for the Lord.
No, he doesn't. And so the first thing was I'd met Marg, my wife, who became my wife.
For over 50 years now.
Yeah, over 50 years now. That's right, yeah. But back then, I met her at a party for a dead cat.
What?
Well, one of the guys in the youth group, any excuse for a party, his cat died. And so he said, let's have a party.
Oh, my goodness. Not a wake or
no,
a funeral
just,
nothing?
No, just he was...
Okay, all right. That's the first I've ever heard of a party for a cat that died.
And I looked across the room, there was Marg, and I fell in love, just like that, you know. And we started
at a party for a cat that died.
Yeah, well, I fell in love. I mean, I was very attracted to her. And so she sort of came along with me a little bit when I tried to take her out for a special date or something. And eventually she said yes, and we began to go out. But then she dumped me.
Is that right?
Yeah, briefly, I found out. But at the time, it was very real.
Until she came to her senses.
Yeah, maybe. But you know, she doing that, really, it impacted me, because she's the first girl I'd ever really loved, really been passionate for. Yeah. And I almost threw away not my faith, but I almost walked away again.
Is that right?
I actually had $5 on me. I went and bought as many beers as I could for that. And then I hitchhiked on the highway out of town, and I got as far as the Bombay Hills, which is just south of Auckland. And I realised I'm an idiot. I shouldn't do this. I go back, and I can't do it. So I went back.
What were you planning on doing?
I don't know. I just was so upset that she
just wanted to go away.
Yeah. But anyway, she...
Well, why? Why did she dump you?
I don't know. I must ask her that now.
50 years you haven't asked her.
I probably, at the time, I would have known, but I think she was just... I think, if I remember right, she was concerned that I wasn't her match. I don't know.
Okay.
So
for some reason...
I must ask her when I get home today.
I want to know.
Anyway, so she shortly after that, she came back and we joined, and it wasn't long before we were married, so yeah.
But you think that was impactful for you?
Impactful, oh yes.
Because
major.
what that caused you to really think about everything? what you're doing?
Well, it made me realize that I could so easily walk away again and live a godless life, but I didn't want that. So I think God, in His wonderful grace, turned me around and made me aware of what I was doing, and I came back. But then in those early months and years of my Christian commitment to, I had other challenges. One was that I had this question, why does God allow suffering? It was an intellectual thing, but it was really something that I wrestled with. So I've mentioned in the book, actually.
I was going to say, among the common reasons why people walk away from their faith, that's got to be right in the top 5 or maybe the top one even.
Absolutely, it's very high. Yeah. It's not just whether you believe in God, but what kind of God is He? Can you really believe that? Anyway, so I wrestled with that, and I managed to come to a belief that, well, I don't understand everything, but I trust God. I believe He is good. I believe He is loving, and I believe He has an eternal perspective on things. He looks from out of how do I say it? Like He dwells in eternity and we live in time. Whether I thought this through completely back then, but I knew that had an effect on my thinking. But a lot of the questions weren't answered. And it's interesting that in the journey of the Christian life, you get some answers, but then you still act in faith, and then down the track you get more answers and more answers, so that you are stronger in your faith, but there are also answers, but you don't know them all at
But there's also questions.
the beginning. Yeah.
I heard a phrase, I wanted to bounce this off of you. Sometimes in life we don't understand what's happening. And the phrase goes, when you can't understand God's hand, trust His heart.
Yeah.
What do you think of that?
I've heard that before.
You've heard
It's
that?
really good, yeah.
We don't understand. There's
That's
lots of stuff
exactly-
happening in life.
that's
What in the
right.
world is that?
Yeah.
Why would that happen to that good Christian person, or all kinds of questions?
Yeah.
Trust His heart.
And another thing that challenged me in those early years was there was a young guy in the church who was so motivated for Christ. He was into everything. He was full on, and
The ideal Christian, supposedly.
and I sort of looked at him with, wow, he's the kind of model to follow, you know. And then he turned right away, walked away from not just Christian living and the church and everything, but it seems, back then, it seemed like he'd turned away from the faith altogether and said, no, it's not for me.
So he truly exited.
He did.
The faith.
And I couldn't believe it. To actually abandon the faith was a huge thing that I wrestled with at the time. And it's something that has stayed with me, not just stayed with me, but it's something that I've noticed and been involved in, engaged with over the years, right down till today.
So that raised questions in your mind.
Yes.
What happened to him?
Yeah.
Why do people like him exit the faith?
Yes.
And hence, you were inspired to write the book that you've currently written,
Yes, that's right.
which we'll get to later.
Yes.
Continuing your story.
Well, as I grew in my faith, I was involved. I was in a brethren church where people could stand up and have open worship, so you could share. I began sharing the Word of God in the worship services, and they got me to preach. And it was with fear and trepidation, and I felt really ill at ease. I suppose lack of confidence. I thought, do I really believe? Do I really know what I'm talking about here? And so I was encouraged, and I wanted to go to Bible college. So we ended up going to Bible college, and
At that point, you were married?
yes, at that point we were married, and we had. Marg was pregnant with our first daughter, and so we did that. We went to a Bible college, and during that period, my desire to be an evangelist or to be involved in mission grew stronger and stronger. In fact, I overheard one of the lecturers speaking to the principal of the Bible college talking about me. I overheard them.
Oh, really?
And the principal said, what do you think about Keith's involvement in Christian work in the future? And the lecturer said, oh, he's an evangelist.
Oh, really?
And it was almost like God gave that to me as a kind of an assurance that he knew what my heart was. And
Yeah.
And
now,
that's-
was that a surprise to you when you heard that?
not really.
It just
was
rang
perhaps
true
more
with
of a-
what you knew?
It was perhaps more of a confirmation,
Okay.
that
Yep.
that was in my heart. But then after Bible college, nothing opened up, nothing that suited or was down that
Yeah,
pathway.
the perfect story would go, you
Yeah.
got your training,
Yeah.
and then you went out to
Yeah.
become an evangelist. But that's not what happened.
No, I
happened?
ended up, I was forced into going back to, forced in the sense that nothing else had happened, so I went back into work.
So now there were opportunities, but not any that really captured your
Nothing
imagination.
that where I felt this is it, this is
okay.
the right, and that both of us did either too. And
So what did you end up doing?
so I actually started as a medical representative or pharmaceutical rep for a pharmaceutical
Went to
company.
Bible school. This was your profession.
Yeah. Well, I had no medical background.
Yeah.
And so I went to the interview and they said, well, you don't have any medical background. We normally get even dropouts from medical school that can be salespeople. Yeah. But I said, well, give me some of your information about your drugs and I'll come back for my second interview. A little bit presumptuous, but anyway, I'll
He's
come
got
back.
confidence.
Yeah. And I'll tell you all about them, which they
Okay.
did.
Oh, okay. They
And
gave you a
so
chance.
I got the job. But that job actually was perfect for me.
Really?
Yeah, because it forced me into critical thinking, into working through pharmaceuticals, what is the trials that are done, and how you determine whether a drug is safe and effective, and how you then convince the doctors that you're speaking to that they should prescribe that drug. And it actually set me up to be more apologetic in my approach to evangelism. It just was a really good training ground. Plus, while I was
Wow, who would have thought?
and while I was sitting there in waiting rooms, because you were the last for the doctor to see. If you had an appointment with the doctor, all the patients came first,
Well, I
obviously.
would hope so, yeah.
Yeah, and so sometimes I would sit for an hour or so, or maybe 2 hours even, in
wow.
a doctor's room waiting to see him or her.
Yeah.
And at that point, I would take my study books and I would read the Bible and study and use that time. I didn't have a tablet back then. I wish I did.
Yeah.
But anyway, so it was a time of training in other ways that really equipped me better for the time when God opened the door to move out into full-time evangelism.
So correct me if I'm wrong, but it helped you see how to make a sound reasoned argument.
Yes, exactly.
So when you get into apologetics, which is a defense of the Christian faith,
Yes,
you know how to make a sound reasoned argument in favor of believing in Jesus.
exactly. And I mean, I had to convince doctors, and I was just a young, untrained, well, really, in medical areas anyway,
Yeah.
person. So I had to convince them. So I had to really know my stuff.
Yeah. How long did you do that?
For 5 years.
Okay.
And then God opened the door for us to move into full-time evangelism. And I was doing crusades around, and especially around New Zealand where we were living.
Well, that was part one of Eric Scatterbo having a chat with Keith Glasgow, who's the author of the book Exit, Turning from Following Christ, which he wrote because of his concern for the number of people he knows who have turned away from following Jesus. To find out more about Keith and his book, you can go to his website, keithglasgow.com. That's Keith Glasgow, GLASGOW.com. Well, thank you for joining us for part one of Keith Glasgow's story. Until next time, when we'll hear part two, I'm Jimmy Colefax, encouraging you to share your story with someone today.
Next time on The Story.
During that time, I was very conscious of different ones who had turned away from the Lord, and it really worried me. And I mean, I would have parents come to me and talk about their son or their daughter who are no longer interested in the Christian faith, had just walked away. So it was a growing concern.
Keith Glasgow joins us once again to share more of his story and more about why he wrote the book Exit, Turning from Following Christ. Keith will tell us how the Lord has been working in his life and has given him a heart for those who are considering exiting their faith. That's retired pastor Keith Glasgow next time.
The Story. Just another way Vision is helping you look to God daily.